at the right place. Our next speaker is IPaT Mirachanian, who's talking about Choropleth maps. His advisor, Alex Endert, is on a trip, so is not here today. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Am I audible? Good afternoon. My name is IPaT Mirachanian, and today I'm going to talk about Choropleth maps and how they can trick you and what you can do about it. So consider this map of the United States counties. I have colored them in proportion to their life expectancy values. For example, San Miguel County, with the highest life expectancy of 97.97 years, is colored yellow, and Oglala Lakota County, with the lowest life expectancy of 62.44 years, is colored dark blue. Our very own Fulton County is somewhere in the middle at 79.33 years, colored teal. This is called a Choropleth map. An important aspect of Choropleth maps is the grouping of the quantitative data values into categorical groups. This process is also known as data binning or data classification. For example, this continuous range I showed earlier can be classified or divided in 4 different ways. And if you look them in a Choropleth map, this is how they look. Notice how different they all look, even though they are essentially showing the same information. And these are all established binning methods in cartographic literature. For example, equal interval is an interval-based binning method in which each bin's range or extent is of the same length. Alternatively, quantile is a statistical binning method in which each bin consists of approximately the same number of data observations. Note that this results in an equalish distribution of green and blue counties, which is unlike the equal interval method that has a much larger distribution of blue counties. Next, there is natural breaks, which is an iterative method, and this creates natural groupings of data that are more meaningful and interpretable. However, if none of these works, mapmakers often utilize manual interval and divide the data into custom bins the way they want. So the choice of binning methods can very much influence policymaking. For example, mapmakers can falsely project a county as doing good or bad when that might not be the case. So for example, consider 3 binning methods: equal interval, quantile, and natural breaks. And Oglala Lakota County, because of its lowest life expectancy, always falls in the first or lowest bin. However, and that's why it's colored blue. However, Maricopa County in Arizona, with a life expectancy of 80.46 years, falls in 3 different bins, 3rd, 5th, and 4th respectively, resulting in different colors of green. So any devious mapmaker can show Maricopa to be performing well using quantile, maybe to look good federally, or not so well using equal interval, maybe to seek additional funding to improve the current state. By the way, there aren't just 4 methods to consider. There are many more, and each of them has its own strengths and weaknesses. So it is very important to carefully consider what method to use to ensure that the map accurately represents the underlying data and effectively communicates it to the viewer. So we built a tool called Exploropleth to help users browse such a catalog of different data binning methods and subsequently compare, customize, and export custom maps from your own data. So let me give a quick demo. Okay, so in this browse view, we show how the same data looks in more than 15 different binning methods. And you can modify the number of bins, like how I'm just changing from 5 to 7, or you can change the color from blues, greens to reds. You can do a bunch of other stuff like sharing, exporting, and so on. Next, you can also compare just the bins that were generated by various binning methods, like taking the map out of the equation. For example, consider the quantile method being highlighted. Now, because it has the same number of data observations in each bin, each rectangle is of the same height or thickness. But if you compare it with a geometric interval method, then you start noticing subtle differences in not just the bin sizes, but also the bin extents. Next, we invented a new consensus binning method called resiliency that considers how a county is placed in different binning methods and accordingly creates a smart average bin. So remember the example of Oglala Lakota County and Maricopa County from before? So this view lets users visualize this information, and it's average bin. But in the interest of time, I won't go much into specifics here, but this is a new method we invented. But finally, if the mapmaker is still not happy with any of these methods, we also have a create view wherein you can create their own bins directly by modifying the bin extents. So next, we were curious how Choropleth maps are actually made in practice, and also wanted to seek feedback on Exploropleth. So we interviewed 16 cartographers and GIS experts from 13 globally serving government organizations and NGOs. We found that Choropleth mapmaking is a complex undertaking with many factors that influence decision-making, such as individual mapmakers, who bring in different cartographic knowledge, tool familiarity, personal rules of thumb, and even personal moods. That was a surprising one. Then mapmakers organization, they bring in their role protocols, guidelines, and there are multiple teams from mapping, reviewing, branding, editing, and so on. The map itself, how is it going to be shared? Like what's the medium, who's the audience, what's the format? The data, where does it come from? Is it good quality? Semantics, for example, data related to water might result in bluish maps, and so on. And then there are clients, vendors, and even governments. They all have their say before a map is published and sold. In terms of data binning methods, they mostly used pretty breaks and manual breaks. Both methods involve making custom bins as per the data, so they didn't really rely on the statistical or the established literature ones. And in terms of number of bins, 5 to 6 bins were most popular, which aligns very well with prior cartographic literature and empirical studies. And what did they have to say about data binning? That, okay, in current tools such as ArcGIS, you cannot compare binning methods side by side. And if you use Python to explore methods that are not supported by ArcGIS, it is still a hassle. And when they saw Exploropleth, they gave us positive and encouraging feedback from both a map making as well as an educational standpoint. They did, however, caution us against some map makers who may still nefariously try to skew the data, especially in the create view of the tool. So our strategy to reduce nefarious uses of Choropleths involves 3 things. First, educate. So educate map makers about various binning methods and their effects. Now tools like Exploropleth can very much help here. Next, help map makers decide appropriate binning methods as per their data and use cases, potentially a tool called Decidopleth. And finally, fix inappropriately binned maps that are out there in the wild in a tool called Fixopleth. So this is what our awesome team, including my advisor, Dr. Alex Endert and Dr. Cleo Andrus, have been working on. There's much more to come, but for now, I will conclude my talk, and I'm most happy to take questions. Thank you.